I'm the teacher on the B2 level course. So in this clip, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about what the course will be focusing on and how the course is structured. So if you've done the perfectly spoken level check and if your result is a B2, congratulations. That means you have an upper intermediate level of English, which is very good. So B2 level means you're very comfortable and proficient at using English in a variety of situations. But in order to progress, to move up, you need to think about widening your vocabulary and becoming more accurate. So that's what this course is going to focus on, these two key elements. We will, of course, look at other issues as they come up, such as pronunciation, for example. So let's have a look at the first part of the course. So you can see that I have structured the course by week, lesson, topic, and content. The IELTS results are as a guideline. So typically a level B2, you'd be an IELTS level 5 to about 6.5. The lessons are going to be balanced between grammar-based lessons and then vocabulary lessons. So in a week, you have a balance of the two. We're going to be starting with question forms, which is a really key part of communicating in English. We're then going to move on to a vocabulary lesson on illness, thinking about describing symptoms using verb, noun collocations. You'll then see that lesson 3 is question forms 2. So often when we have big grammar topics such as question forms, we can't cover it in one lesson alone. So the grammar topics are often split into 2 lessons. This will make sure that you have a lot of opportunity to take in the information as well as to practice, which is key. Every 5th lesson, you can see, is a review lesson. Again, this is a really key part of absorbing a new language. If you take on lots of information but you don't have a chance to review this, then it's very easy to forget. So there'll be lots of review built into the course where you'll have the opportunity to practice what you've studied in the preceding 4 lessons. Okay, so after the first review, we then move on to another big grammar topic, present perfect. Okay, so at level B2, you are probably familiar with the tense, the present perfect tense, but you need practice at activating it and using it in a variety of situations. So once we've covered a quick review of the form, what we're going to be thinking about is how we can use this in different situations. Lesson 7 is a vocabulary lesson, a fun lesson, thinking about how we can describe people, not only their appearance, but also their personality. And we'll be practicing using he or she seems or he or she looks like. Okay, the second vocabulary lesson in this section is describing experiences. So this fits in nicely because it also gives us the opportunity to practice the structures we'll have learned in the present perfect lessons. So we'll be thinking about have you ever, and we'll be increasing your vocabulary to be able to describe experiences. So again, this is a very useful vocabulary lesson because it's vocabulary that you need in your everyday life when you're talking about the experiences that you have. Okay, and then we're following this up with review 2, where, as I explained, we will be reviewing the language covered in the preceding 4 lessons. Okay, so we then move on to narrative tenses. So this is focusing on, it's another grammar-based topic, and again, it's split into two. So we'll be thinking about different tenses when we recount, when we tell somebody a story or an anecdote. And this will be a very, very useful tense review lesson. So we'll be focusing on a wide variety of tenses. See if you can identify which tense is being used, and importantly, why. Can you understand why this tense is used? The vocabulary lessons in this section, the first one is travel, one of my favourite topics. And at this level, we'll be thinking about the difference between British and American English. We both speak English, but there's a lot of differences between the English that's used in America and the English that we use here in the UK. So we'll be focusing on that, as well as some phrasal verbs. So at this level, you will have already assimilated a lot of phrasal verbs, but we will be pushing this and increasing your knowledge. The second vocabulary lesson in this section is thinking about descriptive adjectives. And by this, I mean when you want to describe a flight, a train journey, a car journey, or a holiday. So this is very important when we think about using English for social reasons, to make new friends or perhaps to chat to colleagues in a business context. The idea of small talk, talking about your journey, is very common and very important. We then have review 3 that will cover the topics that we've looked at here. In this last part here of the first 10 weeks, the grammar topic is going to be the passive. So again, we'll start with a review of active versus passive sentences, thinking about why we use the passive, and we'll have a look at how it's structured. We'll continue this with the passive too, and push ourselves to increase our capacity to use different types of passive, present perfect, present continuous, for example. The vocabulary in this part here is going to be focusing on crime and punishment, thinking about describing different types of crimes and criminals, the justice system, and a discussion on suitable forms of punishment. So as I mentioned before, a key factor in B2 level and increasing your level is that you need to widen your vocabulary. And often this means putting yourself in situations where you're describing things, talking about things that you don't normally have to use. So crime and punishment is an example of an area that you might read about, but you don't necessarily normally discuss. So it's a good opportunity to increase the vocabulary there. And the final vocabulary lesson in this section is something that's really, really common for us British people to talk about, and that's the weather. So we're going to be focusing on a weather report and identifying different types of weather described. And then we'll be looking at extreme weather. So in the news recently, there have been a lot of examples of different types of extreme weather that's happened all over the world. We'll be focusing on increasing your vocabulary to talk about this. And then we will finish with review 4. So this is the programme for the first 10 weeks. Remember, there's going to be 2 lessons a week with me. The first 10 weeks of the B2 level course. And I look forward to seeing you then.